We're back. All right, kind of a part two to the last video about trail building, scale trail building, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to walk you through a couple things I've done since that video, little things, maybe things that you might consider, or just add a little bit of cool factor to whatever you might be building. Yeah, we'll kind of see how things progress. I liked how organic and kind of natural it was just walking through everything last time. So I'm going to do that again. And once again, if you got any ideas, drop them below. Nobody commented last time. All 12 of you that watched the last video didn't comment. So come on, let's get with the picture here. Except for Yep. Yep, you commented, my man. All right, let's get to it. All right, so on this little section, this is where the trail went like this, around, up this little gravel pile, and then it went that way. So you can kind of see how, obviously in springtime, it gets overgrown pretty quickly. I like how tall this foliage is. All right, so I don't plan on like hacking stuff down. I just want it to be relatively clear through there. So I'm gonna leave some height because it's cool. Plus I don't intend to hack any of these weeds down. I don't want to hack them down. But the little trail, it'd be cool just to kind of burn through. And for the most part, as a driver, you can walk alongside on the short stuff and you'll be doing okay. So anyhow, this is what I'm focusing on today. Up here, follow this trail. Got some ideas that I'm gonna implement. I started kind of cutting it in a little deeper. You can see how obviously there's far less grass and a lot more dirt being shown. So what I'm doing, number one, I'm making an interesting shape, but I'm gonna be putting rocks in this dirt and trying to kind of create almost like a canyon or a channel that you have to drive through. I don't want people in the grass. Trucks aren't gonna drive in the grass that well anyway, but the goal is to create a zone that they're going to drive in to kind of direct the flow. And what I'm using for tools is obviously the weed whacker and this tiller that I got from my wife. This is the expanded stuff, so the same motor head attaches to the two implements. But the tiller allows you to really get down and bust up some of the grass without having to use a bunch of weed killer or grass killer. It also will rip up any rocks that are there and bring stuff to the surface, gives you some dirt to play with. So don't be afraid to go out with your garden tools and use them. So I weed whacked, and then I used the tiller, and I'm going to probably come through and weed whack a little bit more, because right about here, so you can see that's a good run, is where I want to start this channel. And I plan on using small logs, rocks, some crushed stone bottom, just to create, it's going to almost look like a dry riverbed is kind of the idea. What's cool about it is this hill, water does run off this hill somewhat, and it may actually catch this and be double used as drainage. But yeah, get out there, use your tiller, use your weed whacker, go to town on stuff. You may find tree roots that become exposed. They're awesome. You leave them be, you don't mess with them, and they become part of the course. So let me weed whack some of this out and kind of clear it up a little bit, and we'll try to bring some material in and get started on stacking stuff. All right, you can see where I took the weed whacker and just started cutting in a little bit more. And obviously I'm not weed whacking flat, I'm weed whacking with the head at an angle like this, using the wire as like a cutter to just kind of scrape along. One thing is, I know that once I get this together, weeds are going to come through this thing. So weed killer is going to end up being used. All you hippies are just going to have to deal with it. But what I have found lately is that instead of using like a glyphosate or a 2,4-D, if you get high test vinegar, it will kill a lot of stuff. And it's super acidic, but it's not, I feel like it's a little more friendly, you know, because you can cut it down and it's not here forever, at least to my knowledge. So you go on Amazon, you can get 40, 50, 60% vinegar, and you can either use it just like that with some Dawn as a surfactant, or you can cut it and, you know, drop the percentage. But there's possibilities. Unfortunately, with a trail like this, like if you plan on continuing to use it, weeds are going to grow just like any garden space. So that's that. One thing I want to show though that's pretty cool is that from a distance, and this will be pleasing for the wives, from a distance you can't see that trail. Okay, so I plan on leaving that section of tall grass that way. I have been leaving it like that for like animals and bees and whatnot. Also, I just don't want to mow it and weed whack it all the time. You see where I mow around, and this is the normal route, but that will remain tall. In the winter, it'll obviously die off, but it's pretty cool because for the average person, or if someone stops in and my wife doesn't want to explain that her husband's a total nerd, they can't really see this. All right, so let me take you and show you a couple other things that I did that will also be pretty sick once they're kind of done. So hang tight. All right, I built that bridge. So this is 16 foot 2x4s, two of them, and then there is a 12-inch 2x4 between, obviously. So the overall width is 15, plus these little handrails, or these little railings I put on there. And then instead of putting plywood down or something that makes it completely solid, I went ahead and I cut a 2x4, I ripped a 2x4 vertically, not vertically, horizontally, I guess, to about 3/8. So this is 3/8 or so, somewhere around there, strips from a 2x4. So I ripped them with the table saw, and it gives me all these boards, and you know, you can get a 2x4 for $4, $5, $6. It's way cheaper than buying wood that's already cut that way. So essentially what I did is I measured the narrowest part of my smallest truck versus the widest part of my biggest truck, and that's where I came up with this spacing. And then what I did is I took this chicken wire that I already had from another project, and I put it in the middle. That way, if my son's driving or somebody else that doesn't really know what they're doing, if their truck falls, it's not going to fall in. It makes this thing look really cool, look really rustic, without it being a nightmare. And then this is pressure treated, what is it, like 1 by 1.5 or 3/4 by 1 or something. I think they're $3 or $4 a piece. So Brad nailed them in as a little handrail, a little railing to keep people from falling off. And then I just threw some camo green paint on there because that's my driveway, and my wife didn't want to see this thing. It's not permanent, it's just sitting. This side's pretty flat, that side is up on some rocks. So yeah, so it could be moved and replaced or taken elsewhere if I really need it to be. But at least right now, it kind of blends in with the greenery, kind of. But you can see, obviously, based on last video, how the downhill will go, and you'll come underneath the bridge in that way. And I got a couple little scale-ish ideas that I plan on doing with this. I would like to, somewhere midway in that bridge, hang a rope with a small tire and like a figurine in the tire, like a rope swing. And then the other thing I want to do is, once I dam that water up right there and the water level rises a little bit, I want to have some figures in there in like tubes, like tubing down a river. And then when you drive down your truck into the water will splash, it'll move, the people will move around in the tubes. It'll just be kind of, just a little neat little feature, you know, something I can pick up when I'm not using so I don't get washed away. But, you know, when you have friends over, it's just kind of cool. So that's the bridge. Like I said, 16 feet, worked out perfectly. Yeah, pretty cool. Over on this section, I just did this today, just to see how it'll work. So these are the same pressure treated pieces that I made the bridge railing with. And I cut the ends of them at a 45 and just hammered them into the ground like a stake. And then I screwed in these little hooks and then put this piece of chain on there as just like a guide. As you can tell, I can't measure very well. I eyeballed it, and I am a foot short-ish, maybe 6 inches. Either way, just a little guide. And what's cool about this is, yeah, I could pull the stakes up, or I can just slide the chain off the hook if I need a weed whack or something like that, so it doesn't get all tangled up or busted up. But it just kind of gives you a little bit of shape to your trail, a little guide. You know, keeps people from running way off there and dragging leaves and stuff in. Just a neat little feature, neat little add-on to the thing. All right, back up to the top. I'm gonna grab some rocks and stuff, see if I can start laying some stuff in the ground and get an idea of how this rock course is gonna go on the top side. I guess one thing to talk about would be rocks themselves. You can get free rocks on Marketplace. You can find them a lot, honestly. You just have to be willing to drive for them. The other thing you can do is you can just pick up rocks off the side of the road, which is something I do. If I see something on the side of the road that maybe looks like state ground, not personal property or not someone's private property, I'll snag them. It doesn't account to much, but it's something. I try to steer clear from concrete and busted up chunks and stuff like that. I don't think that looks very good. Now, that being said, I have dabbled in making fake rocks out of concrete, and I'll be using them but I don't want like cinder blocks and chunks and things like that. I really want to avoid it at all costs. And if I am going to use it, I'm going to try probably paint it or do something to make it look more real. Maybe like it's going to be like the ruins of a building, or if I use them there as a base material and then I cover them with dirt, cover them with rock. So let me show you some of the rocks that I have picked up recently. All right, so this is some shale I picked up from a friend of mine who farms in Virginia. This is some super gritty rock I picked up off the side of the road. This stuff came out of the woods at my parents' house. So you can see like they are of different colors and different shapes, and like this shale's like really sharp. And I also got a bunch of really small pieces just to kind of fill in. But you know, find rock that you like, find a color that you like. I realize some of us are just going to use what we got, but there is some rock out there like that, like bright white or maybe like blue, like quartz type rock, and I just don't think that looks good in these scenarios. I want something with some texture, right? Something with some shape or some divots to it. Even this sharp stuff, which I'm deathly afraid is going to cut a tire, honestly. But you know, find stuff that has some shape to it, that isn't just I don't know how to explain like what I'm talking about, but I wouldn't be using the kind of rock they use in like a drainage ditch. If that's all you have, it's all you have, but I just don't think it looks great when a truck's driving over it. And you find something like this where it's got like moss still on it, which is pretty sick. You can actually see how this is kind of like a blue rock that I'm talking about. I'm not a big fan of that. I might use that underneath some stuff and then cover it with a rock that I like this or this, but I try to avoid using industrial looking rock, if that makes sense. All right, so let's take a look here what I've done so far. So you can kind of see how I put the sticks on the side to kind of give us the path, right? And I know that's not super scale, but like it simplifies stuff. It gives people a boundary they have to work within. So here I got some sticks in the ground, and what I find is that if you just cut a log straight, that's fine. But I like to cut them with a taper and kind of sink them in, so they look a little more natural. You know, burying the ends so you can't see where I cut. It looks like a log's just been laying there, and you know, there's been growth and stuff over top of it. So sink that stuff in there the best you can. It's probably going to move when someone drives on it, which is fine. And then positioning rocks, you know, where you can drive over them or they can jam you up. It's not supposed to be hard. It's just supposed to be fun. So we got a couple little channels here, and then up here I dug in and positioned this log to where it's kind of in at an angle. You know, you got a higher spot on one side than the other. So just some fun little trail driving, nothing extreme. I think when I get up here, I'm gonna start digging in way deep and try to create like a deep channel as soon as I get away from this tree, because I don't want to get all up in its roots. So let's see how things progress as we continue up. And I think what I plan on doing between these little features is I have some like really small river rock, and I may sprinkle some in there and just kind of let it do its thing. It's going to shift around and move, but it'll fill in, and the more coverage I have, the less likely I am to grow weeds. So that's cool too. All right, so it's been a couple days. Let's see here. Obviously everything I had before, any rocks that I found while digging this out, I threw in here just to add some to it. I'd like to have some more thrown in there in these little spots just to bounce through. Come over all this and drop down into this channel. So I started this with the pickaxe right there, dug it out, found some roots, cut the roots out, and then I would use the tiller, the battery tiller, to just eat up this dirt. It's pretty soft dirt, but it does have a lot of small rocks in it. And once I got it out a little bit further, I then took the pickaxe and just started creating some low spots. So it's low there, it's low there. So this whole thing will go down, up, down, and then like a double step climb right there. All right. So cool, fun little crawl through spot. I took the dirt from there, piled it there, so you'll climb up and out and then continue to climb. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do here yet. I don't know if I should put rocks on the side to hold the dirt in, but I like the idea of a big elevation change from here up through there and then down, and then we'll just continue on. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do there yet. I got to figure out something to maybe retain some of that dirt so it doesn't get washed away, but also I want to sink some more rocks in there to crawl through. But either way, pretty happy with this channel, this little canyon. And once again, any rocks I saw either threw back behind me or I'll throw them just down in there. As trucks drive over it, they'll settle in and they'll move and they'll find their final resting place. I don't think the whole thing needs to be covered. I think that you can have some dirt exposed. You know, trucks coming through here, it's gonna have its tire up on the dirt that way, digging in, and you know, it's gonna create its own trail kind of thing, which is pretty cool. But either way, I like the rock, I like the traction, I like the varying, you know, ups and downs. I think it's gonna be really fun. So I'm gonna try to finish up this, do something here, and then focus on going that way out of the woods. All right, so I got a good bit done today. Pretty happy with it overall. But I've already broken one of my rules, and that is my bridge rule. So I'm gonna show you what I did, and I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Not the average, not the norm. And I'll show you here, and you can be the judge. Not a bridge you commonly see. So I had this down limb, and it looks rotten, but the center of it's still pretty solid, and it's very hard. So it had this arch, and I was like, that's too cool not to build something on. So I cut a bunch of these boards at 13 inches and screwed them in. And obviously they're a little wonky, which I think is pretty cool. My thought is I could use like an arch, and if I stack it on rocks, you could technically drive under it and over it. Or I could do it up like this, to where you like climb up onto something, okay? When I put it together, all I did is I just screwed a 2x4 into the bottom so that it would hold its, you know, balance. And then I just ran some screws in there. And if the thing was wobbly, I put another screw in, pretty simple. And I'll end up building this up with either dirt or rocks to get up on and the other way, you know? But I think it's pretty neat. For not being a bridge guy, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go. I just saw the wood and I was like, I'm gonna build this and then I'll put it somewhere. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this at all. These are my fake rocks. So a couple things about making fake rocks. They never look real. So these rocks are concrete and those rocks are mortar. And for anybody that doesn't know anything about that, the way I didn't know anything about it, is that mortar has almost no strength. So I mixed it up, no aggregate, etc., plopped it down, threw some rocks in there. My kids think they look like cookies, so I'm thinking about putting them in an area and calling it the cookie walk. And then this is concrete, straight bagged concrete. And then what I did for the water is I put mud water in there and a little bit of that rock dye to give it a brown look. They look like poop. So gonna have to figure out something there. The other thing is those are solid. These are not solid. What I did with these, that one is actually solid. What I did with these is I put some styrofoam down and built it up on top of it to give it some elevation. Kind of like that. And then I just cover it in concrete and it gives it some elevation. So pretty cool. Also makes them not weigh 1,000,000 pounds. And then I just threw some little rocks in there while they were wet, gave them a little bit of shape. Once they start hardening up, I went and just kind of smoothed out some areas that just to give them a little bit of texture, a little bit of shape to them. So not really sure where I'm gonna put them yet, but I wanted to make them, and I did. So cool, another little tidbit there for making stuff. Oh, like I said, that's mortar. That's S-Mix, because I think S-Mix is like stickier or something. And then that concrete is this Pro Finish 5000. So you can mix it by hand or you can do it in a mixer, which is what I did. I think if I do it again, I'm gonna mix half and half concrete, half mortar. Because essentially, from what I know, the concrete is cement plus an aggregate plus some sand, and that is essentially cement and sand, no aggregate. So that's where it gets the strength from the aggregate from the stone. So I think if I go half and half, I should be strong and get a slightly smoother texture to it, as opposed to this. So a little more like a cookie, a little less like a cow patty is the thought.